What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018, getting into the week. A lot of stuff going on today, a lot of news here. So the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to put you on the phone with your comments and questions here. Okay, pardon me, getting right on into it. Yesterday, I reported on this story on how the Secretary of the Interior was actually out there talking about how the U.S. military was ready to blockade Russia's oil and natural gas ships, a naval blockade, to keep Russia from selling their oil and gas in places where the United States wants to sell their oil and gas. And I stressed how blockades are very often the forerunner to war. And I was hoping that the Secretary of the Interior was just mouthing off about this blockade. And then today we get this other story where the United States Ambassador to NATO, Kay Hutchinson, was out there saying that Russia is building a ground-launched medium-range cruise missile system, and that the U.S. was ready to launch a military strike into Russia itself to destroy the production facility before the weapons could be deployed. Now, Russia, of course, is denying that they're building any such thing. Washington is out there in a stunning display of hypocrisy, screaming that this new weapon violates a Cold War treaty. This coming from a nation that walks away from treaties left and right. I mean, ask any Native Americans, ask the Iranians for that matter. So once again, the treaty is important only when the U.S. Says it is. And the United States is concerned, of course, that Russia could launch a nuclear strike on Europe at short notice. So once again, we're getting that Russia bash. But this seems to indicate there is now an official U.S. government policy of belligerence toward Russia. And a lot of people were saying, well, they're just reviving the Cold War because the defense industries can make more money that way. But this is getting dangerously close to a hot war when they're talking about naval blockades and military strikes into Russia. Anyway, this is just getting crazy. All right, let's get over to what's going on with Brett Kavanaugh. Now, remember yesterday, Rachel Mitchell, who is this professional sex crime investigator, 25 years of experience, had been in the hearings last week with Christine Ford and appeared to be kind of low-key questioning. A lot of people thought she was softballing the whole thing, but her final report came on out completely exonerating Brett Kavanaugh and saying Christine Ford is simply not believable. That, you know, she would not even consider filing a case or a lawsuit on the basis of this. So this week, everybody's saying it's time to move forward. And Mitch McConnell is vowing the Senate will hold the Kavanaugh vote this week. At least that's what he is intending. And I'm going to take a guess here that we're going to see a filibuster by the Democrats. They're just going to get up and filibuster and try and drag it up because, unfortunately, the GOP in the Senate does not have enough votes to break a filibuster. Do the Democrats think they're going to filibuster from now until the first of the year? I mean, Congress does go into recess. At that point, the filibuster has to stop. Now, somebody went back to Christine Ford's academic background, and they discovered something very interesting. Apparently, back in 2008, I think it was, she wrote this research article on self-hypnosis to create artificial situations. And basically, this was a paper on how hypnosis can recover memories or create false ones. Now, if you remember that whole McMartin preschool thing, utterly destroyed the lives of everybody, and they had all these hypnotists in there hypnotizing these little tiny kids, and it turned out the hypnotists were leading these kids. They were giving them these ideas, and the kids eventually began to think, yeah, it's a real memory. And it can be a problem in these situations, which, by the way, is why evidence obtained under hypnosis is no longer legally admissible in a court of law. But there is an organization out there, the False Memory Foundation, and they are there to help people who've been wrongfully convicted on the basis of what may be very unreliable recollections in people's memories. So Christine Ford was into this whole thing of hypnosis and creating artificial situations. So we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And I want to back up just a second here to the story that we opened with, which is that our ambassador to NATO is now talking about a U.S. military strike into Russia on the claim that Russia is building a medium-range ground-launched cruise missile system, nuclear-tipped, that is a violation of a Cold War treaty. Russia, of course, denies it. This could be Saddam's nuclear weapons all over, but I wanted our network affiliates to hear that one. Right now, we're talking about Brett Kavanaugh and the circus that continues around his nomination and confirmation. And the Democrats are getting really desperate. Now, you know that Mark Judge is the other witness that's supposed to come forward, and so far, Mark Judge has indicated he has no information to confirm any of the allegations against Kavanaugh. But Maxine Waters came on out with a tweet, and this is a direct quote. "We all know where Mark Judge is. We all believe Dr. Ford. He was in the room. He better not lie to the FBI." That sounds like a mafia threat. You know, we know where you live. It's amazing here. So, getting on back to the story of Deborah Ramirez, where she is claiming that Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a college party, and that in the process of pushing him away, she had to touch it. Ooh, horrible, horrible things. Now, the allegations first surfaced in this piece published at the New Yorker by Ronan Farrow and Jane Mayer. Now, apparently, Ramirez went over 30 years without knowing if it was Kavanaugh or not. She wasn't sure. Then, of course, there was the inevitable week of coaching from liberals, and all of a sudden, the memory conveniently just, whoop, there it was, right in the head. To quote the New Yorker, Ramirez recounted the incident after 6 days of carefully assessing her memories and consulting with her attorneys. Well, they just fell flat on that one because a classmate of Brett Kavanaugh says that the boy who was exposing himself to girls at that party was not Kavanaugh, but another classmate, another frat brother. Okay, getting on over to Swetnick. Swetnick, in her original declaration, made these incredibly salacious claims that Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh were spiking the punch with drugs and alcohol in order to gang rape girls. Then she and even claimed that there was a special torture room set up for all of this stuff. She backed off of that one. Now she's backed off of that again, and in an interview on NBC, Swetnick admitted she never actually saw them spike the punch. She just says they were near the punch bowl. Maybe they were thirsty and they were getting punch. That's why you have punch at a punch bowl, at a party rather. So a lot of men, Republican men, are getting very angry over this witch hunt atmosphere this idea that accusation equals guilt. And they don't like this idea that they're going to be seen as guilty until proven innocent. Meanwhile, liberals on the other side are saying, well, you know, you're just upset because you've never been made to feel threatened or powerless. And that really is the entire liberal argument. You know, it's okay for us to do this. We're the victims. So, with the sexual allegations basically discredited, last-ditch effort, they're focusing on the fact that Kavanaugh likes to drink. And, I mean, a lot of people in Congress drink. Let's be very honest. Harry Truman, he hoisted a glass every once in a while. Joseph McCarthy was a very heavy drinker. It kind of goes with the territory. But the Democrats have got nothing else here. Oh, actually, they did find something. Apparently, long time ago, Brett Kavanaugh was at a bar and threw some ice at somebody. Oh my goodness, he used ice. That stuff is dangerous. It's what killed the Titanic. How dare he use that? We need a 15-day waiting period for ice cubes. And apparently there was a bar fight, and the police showed up, and they talked to Brett Kavanaugh, but he was not arrested or charged. So, talk about desperation on the cusp of madness. I swear, by the end of the week, they're going to be down to the overdue library books. By the way, did you know that Justice Stephen Breyer was arrested for underage drinking when he was a kid? You know, we all have lives. We all grow up. None of us is perfect. We all have things in our past that we wish we hadn't been stupid enough to do. That's life. And liberals have created this idea that we're all supposed to just not do anything and never offend anybody. And if we do, oh my goodness, it's going to be horrible. And apparently are unable to understand that alcohol and hormones and a teenager are going to get some things going along the sexual line. Again, that's our biology, and no amount of indoctrination is ever going to change that. I know the liberals believe otherwise. So let's talk a little bit about Jeff Flake, because he seems to be turning on Kavanaugh. After all, Jeff was the one who went forward and said, yes, we must have one more FBI investigation into these allegations. And apparently he's now out there saying that Kavanaugh's interactions with the senators are sharp and partisan, and we can't have that on the court. So this is the new narrative. If Brett Kavanaugh defends himself, he's not qualified to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. That's what they're trying to sell you with this one. Now, Flake has admitted in a 60 Minutes interview that if he was running for office again, he wouldn't have thrown the confirmation into disarray. He just would have sat there quietly and let the process move forward. So here we go. One of the Kavanaugh accusers, and the name is redacted, but I think we mentioned it the other day, the one who came up with the story and then immediately said, I just made it all up. He has been referred for prosecution for lying about the allegations, and he could face up to 10 years in prison for violations of Title 18, Sections 1001 and 1505 for materially false statements he made to the committee. Remember, it is a crime to lie to Congress. Not a technical crime, a real crime for which you can be punished. Now, however this all shakes out, Kavanaugh and Ford have at least one good thing to look forward to, and that is that their respective GoFundMe accounts have topped $1 million each. Now, probably a lot of that is going to be used up by lawyers' fees, but there was an article we had on whatreallyhappened.com asking if GoFundMe could be used as a money laundry, because that's a lot of money that came on in. You know, if you could set up multiple accounts and send in multiple donations, make a great little money laundry here. Moving on here, remember the Uranium One scandal? And for those who are new to the radio show, the gist of the story is that a Russian-owned company up in Canada wanted to acquire mining rights to a very large chunk of land here in the United States of America, which represented about 20% of our domestic uranium resources. And by the way, we don't have a lot of uranium. In fact, the United States imports uranium. But for some reason, this deal went on through, and buried right in the middle of it was Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And when this deal went on through, all kinds of Russian money poured into the Clinton Foundation. So it looked like a classic pay for play. And investigators are trying to find out what's going on. And there have been Freedom of Information Act lawsuits filed in this. And the FBI is still refusing to declassify 37 pages of materials related to the Uranium One deal, citing national security and privacy issues. Well, I'm sure Hillary Clinton wants this kept private. What national security issue? It was a straight-out mining deal. How is national security impacted by this? Unless the American people find out just how crooked their government is, at which point, yeah, I could see where the insecurity might be building up there. These stories were just breaking when we went to air here. Apparently, ricin has been detected in mail sent to the Pentagon. Now, over at the Pentagon, just like at the White House, all mail that's going on in goes through a screening process first, and 2 envelopes that were addressed to Secretary of Defense James Mattis and to the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral John Richardson, tested positive for ricin. And they've been running this story all morning. At the same time, over in Ted Cruz's campaign office in Arizona, 2 of his staff opened up an envelope with a white powdery substance. They are now in the hospital. There's no word whether they're actually ill or it's simply precautionary. But here is where I'm heading with all of this. All last week, I was saying we're being conditized. The corporate media is not talking about what's happening in Yemen. They're not talking about what's happening in Syria. They're not talking about what's happening anywhere. It's just all Kavanaugh all the time, or Kim Kardashian, or Trump making another speech about how great his new NAFTA deal is, which a lot of people disagree with that too. But we weren't getting the report from the war zone. And I was asking the question, are they trying to get us to sort of like relax on the war issue so that when there's a big false flag, the shock value will override our natural skepticism and analytical ability? Are we looking at another anthrax false flag? Because if you'll remember, right after 9/11, there was an anthrax scare. There were envelopes being sent to media people and politicians in Washington, D.C., some down in Florida. The envelopes were written to look like semi-literate Arab hands, so were the letters inside. And they were filled with anthrax, which was immediately blamed on Osama bin Laden. Well, there are 2 problems with that. First of all, weaponized anhydrous anthrax requires a whole room full of lab equipment to produce, which, given that Osama bin Laden was living in a cave, would have been impossible. When we come back from this commercial break, I'll give you the second reason that was another phony story. So we'll be right back. And aloha America, welcome back to our show. And we're talking about these 2 news stories about how staffers at Ted Cruz's campaign office in Arizona opened an envelope with a white powdery substance. They're in the hospital. It's not known if they're actually ill or it's just precautionary. And this other story where 2 envelopes going into the Pentagon's mail system tested positive for ricin. And right after 9/11, there was this big anthrax scare. Oh, Osama bin Laden is sending anthrax all over the country. And again, the media was just pushing this as hard as they could. The letters were written to look like semi-literate Arabs, which it was like a prop from a cheap movie, is really what it was. And looking at anhydrous weaponized anthrax, it takes a large room full of equipment to make this stuff, something that Osama bin Laden was not likely to have hiding out in a cave in Afghanistan. But the real coup de grace to this scare was that the DNA of the anthrax traced it back to Fort Detrick, the United States Biological Warfare Laboratory. And there was even a security system showed that somebody had gone into the lab where that anthrax was kept and taken some of it out. So it was another big false flag. Fortunately, nobody really died. But they're pushing this war agenda so hard. How are they going to motivate the American people to go to war right now? I mean, from the perspective of the American people, we're sick and tired of war. We've been at war for 17 years, longer than World War I and World War II put together. We're looking at our government is clearly at war with itself, and that makes them weak. And that's another reason we shouldn't be thinking about going to war against a peer like Russia and or China. So this is a very, very serious situation. And let's see. I got to back up to Kavanaugh because this just came on in. The Harvard Crimson is just now publishing today that students have filed Title IX complaints against the judge to block his return to campus if he is not, in fact, confirmed. I mean, they're pulling at all the stops. Anything they can find. Probably PETA is going to show up now and accuse Kavanaugh of kicking blind, crippled puppies or something. Now, this next story is a little odd, and I'm trying to figure it out, but basically what it amounts to is the Trump administration will no longer provide visas for same-sex domestic partners of foreign diplomats and UN officials serving in the U.S. This policy actually went into effect yesterday. And I don't know what Trump was trying to accomplish with this. Now, if the same-sex couple is married, if they're from a country where same-sex marriage is recognized, then the spouse will be eligible for a visa. But that will be a problem because the majority of the world's countries do not recognize same-sex marriages. All right, let's get into the war zones. A lot of stuff going on here. I got to tell you, that statement by the U.S. ambassador to NATO, talking openly about a military strike into Russia to blow up a factory, where we are assured Russia is building a weapon that violates a treaty. As you know, yesterday, Iran carried out a missile strike on ISIS positions in the Euphrates Valley, showing what the range of their missiles really is, and demonstrating they can hit any of the U.S.-backed forces inside Syria. But apparently, they were also using drones. They had 7 unmanned combat aerial vehicles to basically go after the headquarters and gatherings of what they describe as mercenaries of global arrogance. I wonder if their drones were based on the information they got from the one they hacked and brought down inside Iran. Remember when that happened? The U.S. was out there, we can fly our drones anywhere and nothing can happen to us. And all of a sudden, the drone landed. Iran recovered it and reverse engineered it. And Oh, as a matter of fact, it does say right in the article that these vehicles, which are called Thunderbolt, was developed thanks to reverse engineering of the U.S.-made RQ-170 unmanned aerial vehicle. So, good for the Iranians there. More bodies of U.S. air raid victims have been found in mass graves in northeastern Syria. In this case, 2,800 bodies of the victims of the U.S.-led coalition air attacks discovered in several mass graves in Raqqa. This is coming from a Russian media outlet, probably Russia Today. All right, we got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we have a caller on the line, Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Hey, Mike, it's against the law for us to lie to Congress, but what about Congress? They lie to us all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing.
It's a one-way system.
Yeah, Mike, you know what's sad? Like, the liberals and even the Republicans, it's amazing, the victims. What about the victims from all of our airstrikes and our phony wars? What about those women who get killed, I mean...
Oh, well...
Not one...
They don't count. They're not politically useful. So, who cares about them, right?
Yeah, Mike, not one piece of humanitarian aid from the United States to nowhere. Nowhere. Yep. Britain, nothing. Canada, nothing. France, I think France sent over a couple, crackers or something like that when the Russians brought in humanity. But, I mean, they're all garbage, Mike. I mean, there's no other way to say. And then Kay Bailey Hutchinson, you mentioned the, Russia's building this, intermediate range nuclear missile. Well, we're doing the same thing, and look at all the treaties we break.
Yeah,
nobody trusts us anymore.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, Trump pulled out of the P5+1. The U.S. basically went back on virtually every treaty they struck with the Native Americans. We pulled out of the ABM treaty. We pulled out of, I think it was the Bush pulled out of the START treaty. I'm not sure about that one. But the U.S. does not have a good record of keeping its commitments internationally, and that's what makes it a joke for the U.S. government to be wagging their finger at Russia, saying, what you're doing violates a treaty that goes back half a century.
Yeah, Mike, you know what's sad about, Trump? What I realize now is Trump it's just a different part of a tribe. You know what I mean? It's you got his tribe, and then this other groups, that's he's not part of their tribe. Kind of like Bernie Madoff was, he ripped off the tribe but he had his own tribe. It's just Donald Trump is not for the regular person. It's so obvious now by the people who he put around him. But it's Mike, it's dangerous rhetoric now. The United States is unhinged.
Yes.
I mean, my God, it's like you look at the spectacle with Kavanaugh, and you don't see all this rhetoric coming out, and it's just in decline. I mean, it's just I never seen anything like it. I mean, I'm 48 years old. I never seen anything like this. I mean, total unhinged. At this point,
Claire uses that exact term on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's just you look at Sergei Lavrov of Russia, and Putin. They're statesmen.
Yes.
You just got this crazy, just rhetoric coming out, and Trump's got his own rhetoric. But you would think some of these people, they have a little more dignity and honor. There's just nothing left. I mean, because you know what, Mike? They think they're kings of the world. They rule over everybody. They can just bully everybody now, and then this is where we're headed.
Well, but they're getting that from right at the top, because that's the way Trump is behaving to other countries, whether it's militarily or economically. He's behaving like a bully, and the rest of the world is rapidly coming to resent it.
And Mike, Russia had Syria received 49 pieces of equipment. They already got the S-300. I mean, it's most likely set up already.
Yeah,
So I'm just
it's
curious.
now in the hands of the Syrian military, and there are going to be more coming. Russia effectively wants to set up an Iron Dome for Syria, and they're just going to blanket the country with these batteries so that there won't be any place that you can fly you into in Syria where you're not within range of an S-300.
And electronic warfare, the Kuchaka 4, I think it's called, they got set up. And you notice, when's the last time Israel did a strike? It's been a couple of days now, huh?
Yeah, I would, but you know, Israel is certainly talking tough. They're saying they're going to destroy the S-300 batteries, or battalions, if you will, which is going to be a real trick. But again, all it's going to take is one accident or one hothead, and everything's going to escalate out of control.
And Mike, real quick on Kavanaugh, because it's a joke. You know what? It kind of reminds me of the Kuwaiti's ambassador, the daughter, doing the old Saddam incubator thing. This is like this crap all over, just like Saddam's bomb maker on Fox News, weapons of mass destruction. This is the same playbook, like just with Kavanaugh now. You know, it's like this whole lying process. You know, it's like they have a small playbook they use. You know, you can tell. The same with the British. They're all involved in this whole Christopher Steele thing and the dirty dossier, and also the Skripals. Remember, Skripal knew Christopher Steele, right? So I mean, it's all part of this same group. That's just I don't know. It just blows my mind what's going on now. But have a good show, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot, and we're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, you doing, Mike? Hey, Mike, you know, I'd forgotten about that thing about Fort Detrick, Maryland. I think, if anything, that Cruz at 9/11 was a false flag, was probably conducted by the deep state, probably aided by Israel and Saudi Arabia, all right? Because these things all happened at the same time, and it looks like they're up to their old tricks again now, because what they did in Senate Cruz. The other thing is, you just mentioned about the, you know, with Russia now, with this threat about bombing a Russian city. You know, I have to give my sympathies to Vladimir Putin. I mean, this man literally has the world on his shoulders, carrying the world on his shoulders, because how he acts or reacts could mean the end of civilization as we know it, maybe the end of this planet as we know it, because he knows he's dealing with psychopaths that have gotten hold of our country, that have seized this country, and he's also dealing with a psychopath there in Israel with Netanyahu. I would not be surprised if what he might do is give Iran a few nuclear weapons. I mean, he's got over 7,000. Give him a few nuclear weapons and missile delivery just for Israel alone if Israel attacks with nukes, because Israel's probably got about 200 of their own. All it takes is one or two, and that's it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does do something like that, as well as the S-300s that he's supplying to Syria. But again, he's in a tough position because he's got to know, and he's a very smart man. I mean, he's very astute in history, very level-headed, and he's got to know he's dealing with psychopaths, and that you got a president in this country who's not only I don't know, I wouldn't say he's not all there, but he definitely doesn't have it together, and is not in full control of the military. And that is dangerous, boy. I'll tell you, that is extremely dangerous. And I just don't know what can be done anymore. I mean, we still got to, you know, there doesn't seem anybody other than maybe Tulsi Gabbard in the future, if we have a future that long, that maybe could become president of this country and have some kind of rational government. Other than that, you got all these laws
they'll never
now.
let Tulsi even get close to the nomination. You know, we are dealing with that deep state, that bureaucracy, and the only way it will end is with the collapse of our government, like the Soviet Union did, or losing a major war. And I'm sorry, those are the only two options that are out there. But as I am not a fan of civil war or armed rebellion,
I don't know whether there's any other solutions. I mean, we're talking about possible civil war in this country, like you said, total collapse through the economy, but which also could trigger off these warmongers.
Yep.
Or possible all-out nuclear war, which of course would not only end this country, it would probably end the planet as we know it. Okay, there might be a few places left around the world that might have some kind of I don't know about civilization, but maybe like you see the movies like Book of Eli or something like that.
Yeah.
Or what's that other? But other than that, we're talking. This is not a very. Out of all those three, we'd probably be best off with a civil war. I hate to say it would be a horrible thing, but at least it wouldn't mean total destruction of the country and of the planet.
Well, I wouldn't assume that. I mean, look how bad the Civil War was, and what a sizable chunk of the American population were killed in it. And then look at the weapons it was fought with, and then look at the weapons the government has today.
Yeah, but do you think the government is that crazy that they would start nuking their own people? I mean, if they started. Well, I shouldn't say that. They're crazy enough to launch 9/11.
They could launch a nuclear weapon onto an American city just to get war with Iran going.
Yeah, Iran or even Russia. Just like what was that movie called with Clancy, Some of All Fears?
Yes.
Remember?
Yep.
One where Baltimore was blown up, but that was supposed to be like neo-Nazis from Germany or something.
Well, in the original book, it was a Muslim cleric figure, kind of along the lines of Ayatollah Khomeini. They changed the villain for the movie.
Yeah, they changed the villain. But I'm not so worried about any of that. I'm not worried about neo-Nazis from Germany, and I'm really not out. And I'm certainly not worried about Iran, because I don't think Iran is anything like I'm worried about our own government. Because I don't think this is an American government anymore. I don't consider these people American. I consider them traitors, occupiers. It's as if we've been occupied by some kind of a foreign, overnight, somehow a foreign entity has grabbed control of this country. Whether they're satanic, whether they're just plain bad and evil, whether they're Illuminati, whether they're
greedy, power mad. But
they're all greedy, yeah. But I think they're more than greedy. There's more to it than that. I think out and out evil. Whether you want to look at it in a satanic, it's Satan. I know you don't believe in God. I know you're kind of an atheist. I do believe in God, but
okay, Mark. I need to fit in here for a second.
Yeah.
Good and evil are subjective terms by the observer, and we may look at somebody like a George Soros and say he's evil. But if you were to ask Soros himself, he's not going to say he's evil. No man is evil in their own eyes. There really is no such thing as a villain who says, I'm a villain and I enjoy being evil. Despicable Me was a movie, and a very fun one. But it's basically groups of individuals or individuals seeking money and power and feeding their baser instincts. Unfortunately, the technology has grown to make them very, very dangerous to the planet itself.
Yeah, well, Mike, you got to look at also some of them actually, whether they believe in Satan or whether you believe in Satan or if I believe in Satan or not, some of them actually do, because they attend things like Bohemian Grove and some of these rites, which are actually worshiping Satan. So if they worship Satan, that means they worship evil. Whether you believe there's a devil or you don't believe there's a devil, it's supposed to represent evil. So they know.
Okay, hang on. My understanding at Bohemian Grove was they go through the ceremony of worshiping this figure of an owl, and there are a lot of organizations like Oddfellows or Elks or the Masons, where they have all their own little internal rituals, but it doesn't mean that the people attending those rituals have stopped their belief in whatever religion it is they believe in when they're outside the door. So I think you're reading a little too much into that. Anyway, listen, Mark, I need to let you go. Layla is on the line. She's been waiting very, very patiently. So let's switch over to Layla in Ontario. Layla, welcome back to the show, and what is on your mind today?
First, before I put forward a theory for people to consider. I would really like to ask people to stop talking about a civil war as if it can solve anything. What any kind of war does is it destroys whatever remaining law and order, even if it's a minor portion, it completely removes the effectiveness of a minority who has retained any degree of sanity or respect for the rule of law and order. Now, to get on to my theory, I have a question about CNN. Their ratings have increased, apparently, since Trump started his assault on CNN. Who is the president of CNN? Jeff Zucker. Who was the CEO of NBC who gave the green light to do Trump's The Apprentice? Jeff Zucker. I'm beginning to wonder, and I have to confess I didn't come up with this idea on my own. It was from Steve Pachenik's one of his recent talk elements or episodes. I'm wondering, it gave me the idea that I'm wondering if maybe Trump is really not quite deranged, but if he does not have some kind of arrangement to create kind of like a reality show, a soap opera, where he takes us constantly to the edge, where we're wondering, where we're on these cliffhangers, and then suddenly there's a resolution. Will he be impeached or won't he? Will NAFTA go through or won't it? Will Kavanaugh be confirmed or won't he? We've had one crisis after another, and what it's done is brought everyone to the brink to the point where we're actually talking about a civil war. That's the last thing anybody needs, and that's really all I've got to say, because I'm beginning to think that Trump is toying with us.
Well, I'm sure that Trump is going along with the idea that the government and corporate media are still trying to control what Americans are concerned about, where we're looking, what we're listening to. And Trump certainly gets on up and he does his part of the show. He handed out some CMHs yesterday. He's flying all over the country to rallies, and he is acting like he's a reality show star. And your theory has got some merit. But I think it's really less about CNN and more about the U.S. government's propaganda directives to try and keep Americans looking one way before something really bad happens over in the other direction. Anyway, Leila, we're coming up on a commercial break. Thank you very much for the phone call, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And boy, there's a lot going on today, really. All right, getting on back to the news. As I was sharing with that caller, Russia has now officially delivered the S-300 system to Syria. It is on the ground. It is assembled. It is under the control of the Syrian military forces. So that's a done deal. And it looks like there's probably going to be a lot more coming because Russia is saying they want to basically create an Iron Dome for Syria. And just make it impossible for anybody to come into Syria without permission, without getting shot down. So we're going to see what's going to be the next move. I can't imagine that Israel or the United States is going to be happy with a stalemate, which is where we are right now. Putin's happy with a stalemate because he doesn't want a war. And so all he needs to do is push just enough to stall the progress of the war machine. So what will the war machine come up with next? False flag, all-out attack. It's going to get messy here. Now, the United States military has started constructing a new base, like we don't have enough around the world already, in western Iraq near the Syrian border. And apparently it's to perpetuate its occupation of the Arab country, regardless of all the opposition from everybody all over Iraq, including the government of Iraq. This is turning into another Syria. We want you to go. We're not going to go. We're the American military. We're going to stay right here. Now, the United States has announced they're going to evacuate the consulate in Basra, Iraq, of all non-essential personnel. And basically they're saying it's because of the Iranian threat. It's the Iranian threat. Well, you know, Iran and Iraq have already had their war a while back. Wasn't really good for either one of them. And Iraq, of course, has a completely different government system now. So I don't think there's really a danger of Iran attacking Iraq. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is out there saying, Iran is a threat. Iran is a threat. Ooh, we've got security threats from Iran. What are they thinking of doing? Attacking Iran and Russia at the same time? They might be. Russia's already indicated they're ready to step on in and support Iran against military aggression. And everybody now knows they can do it because they did it in Syria. Now, here's a very interesting little story. This came out of Fars News. Apparently, there has been a prominent Saudi whistleblower saying that they're having a problem with their Saudi military officers quitting the war in Yemen because they understand what they're doing is not a clean war. And they're feeling that, yes, they risk being listed as war criminals. Yeah, commit a war crime, get listed as a war criminal. We're going to take a break for station identification. We're going to be back with hour number 2 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines, pardon me. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the areas of conflict around the world. Apparently, during the month of September, just this last month, Israel killed 26 Palestinians and wounded 2,300 and arrested 450. They demolished 16 houses, 18 facilities in the occupied West Bank, and handed over 27 demolition orders for Palestinian homes in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem. So this is the reality of what the Palestinians are having to deal with. Now, over by the coastline, the Israeli Navy has injured 93 Palestinians in a boat protest against the Gaza siege. And apparently, well, this is coming from the Palestinian Health Ministry, and they're reporting the Israeli Navy injured 93 Palestinians, including 37 shot with live fire during a boat protest against Israel's blockade. Now, the health ministry is saying that the Israelis engaged in excessive use of force, it certainly sounds like it to me, and fired live rounds at the boats and at the protesters just standing on the shore. And apparently the Israeli army was targeting medics and ambulances with live fire and gas bombs, which we've seen Israel do before here. Now, remember when Netanyahu got up at the United Nations and he immediately launched into Iran, has a secret atomic warehouse with 300 tons of stuff they should not have, and we need an investigation. We need to go there, and the warehouse is probably empty by now, but if you go in with a Geiger counter, you'll find all the evidence you need, blah, 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 blah. Did I mention Hitler? Now, this was a step up from the cartoon bomb that he did in 2012. But interestingly enough, United States intelligent officials quoted by Reuters are saying, no, the claims are not true. And I'll bet you Netanyahu is already on the phone to the White House saying, you get those guys back in line. When I say Iran has a bomb, you don't question me on that. As we mentioned, was a distinct possibility yesterday between the tensions over Taiwan, the tensions over the South China Sea, and the tariff war. China has canceled the October security dialogue with U.S. defense officials. So our relations with China are very, very much deteriorating. Good news from the Koreas. They have begun clearing the landmines from the DMZ. And that's going to be a big job. There are almost 1 million landmines buried along the border. But they've started clearing this area in the village of Panmunjom, and mines will be removed from a separate site where hundreds of soldiers were killed in the Korean War. And apparently Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un agreed to do this when they met last month in Pyongyang. Now, that is going to be a difficult job, not just to find the mines, and maybe they'll just explode them in place. That might be the best thing that they could do. And I know there have been deliberate mine-sweeping tanks where they'll have these two booms that come out from the front of the tank, and there's a big drum, and it's covered with these chains that flail around and literally thrashes the ground. But 1 million mines, people are going to have to be very, very careful walking around there for decades to come. I mean, look at some of the other areas where landmines were being used, and they'll go in and they'll say, yep, we've cleaned it up, all the mines are gone. And then all of a sudden you see some cow flying through the air. Have you noticed that all this talk of peace between the Koreas and all these overt actions leading toward reunification are not getting covered in the corporate media? It's not happening. I mean, Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in have, for all intents and purposes, ended the Korean War. They're tearing down that demilitarized zone. They've pulled back their forces. North Korea put all that artillery in storage. They're opening up the rail lines and bridges. It's moving ahead. They've signed a mutual defense cooperation pact. The Korean War is finally over after all these years. And of course, what we're getting from Washington, D.C. is, no, that war is not over until we say it's over. That's our war. We paid for it after all. Amazing. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Interestingly enough, plane spotters photographed a Russian MiG-31 taking off with a very large, never-before-seen mystery weapon. Now, the MiG-31 is called a Foxhound. It's a 1980s Soviet fighter that remains one of the fastest and highest flying jets ever built. It's basically able to reach almost Mach 3 near the edge of space, and does it while carrying large payloads. So the speculation is that this combination of the Foxhound and this very large, what looks like a missile, that it may be an anti-satellite missile, which is now in testing. When the real war breaks out, you're going to see it directly overhead, because everybody's going to be going after everybody else's satellite. And that will be the end of space flight into low Earth orbit for who knows how long, from all the debris flitting around. Another story, this one out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain, and they're talking about China's new spy satellite, Project Gunlan, and the claim that it could use lasers to spot submarines up to 1,600 feet below the ocean's surface. Now, the claim in the newspaper is these lasers will be so powerful they will make the upper layer of the sea more or less transparent. And apparently these lasers could be 1 billion times brighter than the sun. Okay, I'm not sure. Because when you're talking 1,600 feet, even lasers that bright are going to have difficulty penetrating, let alone getting a reflection from the submarine back up to the surface. So, what I think this Chinese satellite is really doing, And this was something that was accidentally discovered years ago with NASA's CSAT program, where they put up this satellite that was going to use synthetic aperture radar to study the surface of the ocean. And of course, every time that the radar would pass over a ship, there would be a very visible wake behind the ship. So far, so good. Then all of a sudden, somebody started seeing wakes for which there were no ships, and it was realized that these were submarines. Even submarines, they thrash up the water, and that turbulence will reach the surface at some point. And I have a feeling that what this Chinese satellite is doing is, instead of synthetic aperture radar, it's using lasers to just get very accurate surface maps of the ocean, looking for ship's wakes for which there is no ship. And this is a big strategic issue, because when you're talking about a potential nuclear war, the big question on everybody's mind is, where are the nuke boats, the SSBNs? See, if there's going to be a nuclear exchange, the United States maintains what it calls the nuclear trident. There are the ground silos, the Minuteman bases. Those are in fixed locations. Then you have the air assets, you know, the bombers, or cruise missiles in this case. Then you have the boomers, the ballistic missile submarines. And they're built to be very, very quiet. They're built to be a hole in the water. And nobody is supposed to know where they are. That's how it works. But if China can spot those and track them, and that's a big part of submarine training, is trying to get on the rear of somebody else's submarine and stay with them. So, yeah, I think, as described by the Daily Mail, I don't think it's workable. I mean, the first question that pops into my mind is, how are they going to power this thing? When you're talking about laser beams 1 billion times more powerful than the sun, I don't think that's even been achieved yet in any laser research. Okay. There's an organization called, well, it's a group of atomic scientists, and they issue what's called the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, and they've done this for many, many years, and they're very well known for this little icon that is a clock face of just the last quarter hour. And there is a little hand pointed right at midnight, and there's a little hand which moves around through the years. And it's their icon for how close are we to nuclear annihilation. Now, back in 1995, the clock was set at 14 minutes to midnight, but then the US and European allies took advantage of a weakened Russia to advance NATO into Eastern Europe, which is why we're in the situation right now. And so now the minute hand on the clock face has been advanced to just 2 minutes before midnight, the closest point to possible atomic apocalypse since the end of the Cold War. Everybody understands how serious this business is. And there could be a mistake. And what concerns me is all these automated weapon systems that are operating far too fast for humans to look at and intervene. And they do make mistakes. That's what led to the USS Vincennes shooting down that Iranian passenger jet. The Aegis system, the software, I assigned the same identical target tracking number to 2 different targets. The passenger jet, and way off in the distance, an Iranian F-14 that was on a training flight. And it just merged them into one and presented the target, and the captain said, okay, and the passenger jet was down before anybody could do anything about it. I think that's also what happened to TWA 800. They had a target drone heading into the area. They were going to launch a missile. This was a test of Aegis CEC. The missile came out of the tube, locked onto the wrong target, turned and killed the 747 before anybody could stop it. So, all right, let's talk about the economic news now. The IMF has issued a warning about slowing growth around the world, which in turn is discouraging investors. And so global stocks are in decline. It's not just the American economy that's in trouble. It's slowing down all over the world. And when economists talk about growth, they're talking about more indebtedness. But people aren't borrowing because they don't have the jobs to pay it back here. Now, over the past 12 months, the United States national debt has increased by $1.271 trillion with a T dollars. It's out of control. This government has not been able to get the national debt under control until the days of Andrew Jackson, who ended the First Bank of the United States and then paid off the national debt. And ever since we got saddled with the Federal Reserve, the debt is growing and growing and growing. It's completely out of control. We had this other article we mentioned, I think it was a few days ago. In a few years, the U.S. government will be spending more of your money on the interest on the national debt than it spends on the military, and we know how much the military gets. And that means there's not going to be a whole lot left over for you guys. Okay. Over at General Electric, they're not doing very well. They've removed their CEO, and they've issued a very dark warning on earnings, something like $500 billion. That's like erasing Facebook. Over at Verizon, it looks like they're getting ready to outsource 5,000 U.S. jobs to India. They're basically going to let go of their IT department. We're not talking about phone customer support or anything like that. We're talking about the IT department. And Verizon is going to outsource that to the Indian outsourcing firm Infosys. Now, Verizon is saying it's going to result in 1,000 layoffs. Employees of Verizon are saying, no, it's closer to 5,000 workers will be laid off eventually because their jobs are being sent to India. So unfortunately, Donald, you haven't gotten the employment situation under control. Now, as you know, Trump is out there announcing that his new NAFTA version 2.0 is a wonderful thing. A lot of people are not so sure. And one of the things that worked for the U.S. favor is American dairy producers will get more access to the Canadian market. But that means that Canada's dairies are going to be told to produce less milk, which means they're going to make less money. And the Canadian farmers are very upset about that. All right, let's take a phone call. Don in Iowa, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, you were talking about the economy and the debt. You're talking about the national debt increasing like crazy.
Yes.
A lot of these guys say the Republicans, and I'm a Republican. I guess I'm a registered Republican as opposed to being a Democrat, but they all believe in these tax cuts. And what one of the thing they always say is every time you cut taxes, you raise revenue. That did happen the first time when John Kennedy did it because the tax rates were real high up there, yes. And he cut them, and then he got more revenue. But that doesn't happen forever. And if you follow that to the logical conclusion, the logical conclusion of it would be cut the tax rates to zero, and then you'll have an infinite amount of revenue, right?
No, it doesn't actually work that way. In fact, it follows kind of a parabolic curve where you have 100% tax at one end and zero tax at the other end. And governments are always trying to find that little sweet spot in the middle where they're getting the maximum tax revenue by adjusting those tax rates. But the reason it worked under John F. Kennedy was that our nation still had the means to expand productivity and industry. And with the reduction of the taxes, economic activity did increase, thus more revenue was being generated, and the actual tax revenues collected went up. Today, it's a little different. As we just mentioned, jobs are being sent out of the country, and even if tax rates are cut, it would make us a little more comfortable. But right now, today, it's very hard getting more economic activity going because the manufacturing is gone. And automation is taking over. So unless you're going to start taxing robots, this economy can't be saved. Let's just be honest and face up to facts. This economy can't be saved. They're going to drag it out as long as they can and put as much of it in their pockets as they possibly can. But this economy is dead. It's just looking for a place to fall down. Okay?
The point I was trying to make, though, is that...
All right, stay on the line. Stay on the line. I'm going to bring you back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're still on the phone with Don in Iowa talking about the economy. And Don, you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, what you said is correct. The tax rate has to be somewhere between 0% and 100%. And you find the sweet spot there where you're going to get you're not going to stifle the economy too much, but you have to get some revenue from taxes. But these guys, a lot of these diehard... I forget the name of the guy that supply side conservatives. They say no, you have to constantly cut the tax, cut it some more, cut it some more, cut it some more. Well, and what they try to tell you is the more you cut it, the more revenue you're going to get. That's not true. And I just said if you bring it to the logical conclusion, you would cut it to zero. And I try to tell these guys when I argue with them, cut it to zero, and then you get the maximum amount of revenue. Okay, I'll let you go.
All right, yeah. Like I said, the math on that, it's actually a parabolic curve, and you need to be someplace in the Senate. The big problem, of course, is that Congress are flatly irresponsible with your money. They spend money all over the place on wars, on Israel. They spend money to basically convince you to vote for them. They'll do something nice for you for the district and everything to keep your votes going. But mostly, they are irresponsible. It's not their money. They can just spend it anywhere that they like. It's not their money. They don't have to worry about it. The Federal Reserve will just print up more of it, and somewhere down the road, other people's taxes will repay it. Nobody in the government is ever thinking long term. It's always, next election or my retirement. Then it's somebody else's problem. And it's a very, very bad way to run an economy and a country. Okay. Two prominent market observers, Robert Shiller and Edward Chancellor, are expressing their concern about the stock market. And they're not the only ones. I'm starting to see this literally all over the place. Everybody is worried about whether they're going to be able to keep up this charade much longer, because that's exactly what it is. This goes all the way back to the Clinton administration, the president's special working group on the markets, otherwise known as the Plunge Protection Team. And they have access to vast amounts of capital. So when the market looks like it's going to turn down, they can shove it back up again, which if anybody else was doing that, it would be called fraud and they would go to jail because it's crushing the short sellers. It's cheating them. But Bill Clinton wanted that stock number way up high so he could use it as a banner, wave it back and forth and say, look, it's the economy, stupid. We're doing really good. We got a good stock market and a federal budget surplus, which actually came out of the Social Security Trust Fund. But all the king's horses and all the king's men, at some point, they're not going to be able to keep it going. You can only keep the illusion up for so long. Okay, over in Catalonia, the pro-independence Catalonians basically stormed the parliament, and the pro-Spanish members of parliament have been escorted out. So that situation is starting to escalate over there. Okay, this is a little weird. There's this museum, the Tate Modern, and they have this exhibition on the migrant crisis that actually spritzes visitors with a chemical that will make them cry, so that everybody standing around looks like they're crying over the plight of these migrants, and it's all a hoax. And apparently they're assuring everybody that the chemical is perfectly safe, but the artist says we're trying to create forced empathy in visitors. Actually, I think the reaction is going to be forced annoyance. That would be mine. Y'all take a look at the exhibit. Don't force me to cry. I'm not going to transfer that emotion to the art exhibit. I'm going to transfer it to whoever hit the button on that spritzer. Now, this is a good one. You're going to love this one. Over at the University of Manchester, they have now banned clapping with the hands, because according to the politically correct people over there, traditional clapping can cause anxiety and issues for students with deafness. They feel left out. And under the new measures, if you want to show approval for what's going on, you do what they call jazz hands, which is your hands are out and you wiggle your fingers. That's it. That's the new thing. Huzzah, huzzah. This PC stuff has just gotten so ridiculous. But we're going to take a break for commercials here, and we'll be back with more after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, the Russia bashing continues, and sometimes the propaganda gets a little bit silly. And as you know, they were screaming that Russia was trying to influence our 2016 elections. Russia's doing this, Russia's doing that. I forgot the list here. But, you know, they're obviously after our democracy. And then the latest bit of lunacy is the Russians are targeting our civil society organizations, such as the Boy Scouts. Now, that really is rather silly, I think. And it gets even sillier than that. Now, not too long ago, there was a movie that came out, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and looking at social media and various online websites for fans, it was not well received. But director Rian Johnson is off the hook, because an academic paper has discovered that the negative buzz came from Russian trolls. It was all Russia's fault that the movie didn't do well with the fans. Actually, no, it was a terrible film. I'm sorry, it was. I did not enjoy it one tiny bit. Over at the Nobel Prize Committee, they're no longer going to be concerned with the merits of your work. They are explicitly calling on nominators for the Nobel Prize to consider diversity in gender, geography, and topic. So we need to give a Nobel Prize to a woman, and to an African, and to blah and blah and blah. They've destroyed the credibility of the Nobel Prize. Alfred Nobel set that up to reward excellence in scientific endeavor. And if you're worried about diversity or gender balance, don't forget Marie Curie won one of those. But I mean, that's how ridiculous this whole liberal political correctness is. They're taking out any reason for people to want to excel at work. We're turning into another version of the Soviet Union. Everybody gets paid the same, no matter what you do. And the awards are handed out on the basis of politics, not accomplishment. We have got to go back to a system where we are rewarding our children for academic excellence, not firing teachers who are flunking the kids don't turn in their homework. It's okay to have people who do better than others. It's a measure of what's in their character. There are some students who really want to learn and they work hard at it. And there are other young people who just, it's not in them. It's not in them to be an academic, and they're just going to coast on through. And that's what they want. That's what their nature is. And trying to say, well, they're both equal, that's an insult to the kid who wants to be a good student. The liberals always like to say, oh, well, this poor kid is being victimized by his underachievement, or this other child is being victimized by this bias, and we're going to correct that. Well, all you've done is you've created a new victim. Because if you look at all of these things liberals are trying to do to correct some imagined wrong with the universe, somebody else gets hurt with it. Okay. Remember Steve Wozniak was co-founder of Apple, and after Apple really took off, Steve kind of just semi-retired, enjoyed himself, while Steve Jobs went on, of course, to be the star of the show at Wood. The Woz is still around, and he's come on out saying that from where he sits, AI will never be smart enough to drive a car. And this is in light of, we were talking yesterday about the new BMW, the X5, where it's got a self-driving system that can go up to 40 miles an hour, but because of legal liability reasons, you have to pay attention to it. You have to make sure it's driving the car correctly. Well, if you're having to pay attention and just stay there, what's the whole point of not driving your car yourself? Because driving, at least to me, is actually fun, especially mountain driving. I love that kind of stuff here. But the problem ultimately, of course, is the fact that all across America, the roads are hardly standardized. So these artificial vision systems and AI systems, they can't always detect where they are with their current algorithms. They need to make the next leap up where they conceptualize what they're looking at. Oh, that's a stop sign. Oh, this is a crosswalk. These are people. And literally create the map in their memory chips with which to navigate through. Right now, most of these systems seem to operate by looking for cues, visual cues, that something is in the way. Okay. Remember that Facebook hack? It affected 50 million users. Apparently, it also left people's Tinder, Spotify, and Instagram accounts exposed. And apparently, there was a follow-up conference call with reporters, and Facebook revealed that hackers may have been able to access any service which a person used their Facebook logins to access. And I often wondered about all these various websites you'd go to where it says you can log in with Facebook. Oh, it's wonderfully convenient, and it gives Facebook all kinds of data about where you're going that they can sell to ad companies and marketing companies. But again, it's a security risk. This cyber utopia that they're trying to sell us only works if you have mostly good people using it. But I think what sociologists are probably going to be concluding in the near future is that the internet represented a technological form of empowerment where people could do amazing things they couldn't do before, and more importantly, they could do it anonymously. And I'm afraid that we are discovering that a lot of the American people, as our culture has declined, as the morality of our leadership has declined, that a lot of people using these computers, they're sinking down to their basest nature, their baser natures. and saying, yeah, I can do this. I can harass this person. I can cyber stalk. I can steal, get away with it. And it doesn't help that so much of the entertainment coming out of Hollywood glamorizes this kind of behavior. So, now a little bit of good news from over in InfoWars land. Alex Jones has sued PayPal for the InfoWars ban over hate and intolerance. And PayPal banned InfoWars because the website, quote, promoted hate and discriminatory intolerance against certain communities and religions, end quote. Well, you know something? When you have freedom of speech, it's okay to do that. I don't agree with promoting hate, you know, but you can't speak your mind and not have somebody stand up and say, I'm offended. Especially with this liberal PC world that we live in. Every time you open your mouth, somebody's going to complain. So in the complaint filed by his lawyers, they're accusing PayPal of banning InfoWars for no other reason than a disagreement with the message the plaintiff conveys. And they call the ban unconscionable because PayPal has never advised users that it might ban users for off-platform activity. Well, you know, many years ago they did that to me. And I didn't have the money to sue, but what I did was basically start listing out all the porn sites that PayPal was the payment engine for, including one child porn site. Now, PayPal has now spun off that portion of their business under a different name, but they did reconnect my site. But it is inappropriate. PayPal is supposed to be a business. They're a payment processing system, and what Alex Jones or I do when we're not using the payment processing system really is none of PayPal's business. And I hope Alex Jones wins. I hope he wins big. I hope he gets a judge that says, yeah, corporations do not have civil authority over American people, which is what PayPal is trying to enforce. All right. Somebody has done a study and discovered, actually this was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. There were 24 studies done across Canada, Germany, Japan, and the United States of America, which basically said video games, violent video games, really do encourage children to be more violent. Teenagers who play Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, and Manhunt are more likely to get into fights at school. It does sort of make sense. These violent video games are desensitizing kids to the issue of violence. And by the way, while I personally do not play it, I think some of these newer games that are coming along about building things like Forge of Empires, I think that's a good trend. Because, you know, video games shouldn't be just about shoot 'em up the other guy or slice 'em up. We've got to find some other part of the children's brain to engage. By the way, if you're a fan of Kim Kardashian, you need to be very careful about searching for her online because hackers plant more malicious links in search results for Kim Kardashian than for any other famous figure out there. This is coming from McAfee. And he says, yeah, cyber criminals are known to use the allure of celebrities to try and trick internet users into clicking on links that lead to malicious sites used to install malware, steal your personal information. Again, it's completely out of control. And the government doesn't seem to care. We're being pillaged. It's open season on the American people. Maybe the government's agenda is to make computers so dangerous to use that we'll quit and go back to getting our news from the TV set. All right. According to an article in the National Post, the Five Eyes Intelligence Network, or Echelon, is back to demanding tech companies provide a backdoor into all their electronic devices. And basically what they're saying is the tech companies will either do it voluntarily or it will be mandated by the government. So they've had these requests before, but the big change now is, you will do it or we will do it for you. And so obviously privacy experts are coming forward saying, the government is trying to legislate a requirement for tech companies to build backdoors for law enforcement. The problem is you can't trust law enforcement. They're at the very least looking for civil forfeiture opportunities. There was I keep referring this back to the Seattle APEC years ago, back in the 90s, where U.S. government agents were caught hacking into the computers of conference attendees and stealing business secrets. So if there is a government-mandated backdoor in all your electronic devices, all of your business secrets, your patent applications, Aunt Mary's top secret chocolate chip cookie recipe, they're all exposed. And we have already seen that these government-issued backdoors eventually fall into the hands of the cyber criminals. Look at all the NSA and CIA hack tools that got leaked on out. Now they're on the dark web. They're being used against us. And again, this is completely unconstitutional. And just like the New Zealand customs people, the Five Eyes are saying, well, we have to do this to fight crime and to fight terror. No real criminal or terrorist is going to have incriminating information on their electronic devices. They're going to find other ways to share information. If you're out on the shortwave radio, you still have the number stations. If you don't know what I mean, number stations are shortwave stations that broadcast series of numbers and nothing else. And those are encoded messages to agents in other countries. And they use a one-time pad, which makes it impossible to break. But that Fourth Amendment says, no, you cannot do it. So, it is becoming dystopian. When computers first came along, they were supposed to empower us and make our lives better, and now they are being turned into the tools of our enslavement. Apparently, owners of the new iPhone XS are complaining about some image processing that is built into the camera system because it's making their selfies look too good. They're complaining the camera is automatically smoothing skin. I imagine somebody in marketing thought that was probably going to be a good idea, but I think it should be an optional feature. But basically, the users are saying the photos they take, the selfies they take, look similar to edits applied in beauty apps like Facetune. Now, there's software out there to fix up portraits and clean things up. Some people like them, some people don't. And I think we've reached a degree of fakery where a lot of people are saying, I'm tired of that. I don't need to be photoshopped anymore. I don't need to have Grecian Formula 16 on my hair. This is who I am, and what I look like. Deal with it. If you're not happy with it, fine, walk away. And I also still view this phenomenon of the selfie as a symptom of a population which has become totally self-absorbed and vain. We should be looking at each other, not ourselves. We should be looking at the rest of the world. Anyway, we're going to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I'm just looking around the web at all kinds of things here. Over in Indonesia, they're having a very rough time of it. The death toll has risen to 1,234. The rescues are still ongoing. And officials are worried the extent of the disaster could escalate even further, with several large coastal towns still isolated because of the damaged roads and down communication lines. So they don't know what's happened there or how bad it is. So far, nearly all the victims that they know of were from the city of Palu on Sulawesi. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Indonesia had, emphasis on the past tense, an early detection system along the coast. But it had not worked since 2012, even after a 2004 tsunami killed 230,000 people. According to a spokesman for the National Disaster Mitigation Agency, the buoys aren't working because they ran out of money. The government cut the funding year after year to the point where they couldn't run the buoys anymore. And that's why with this last tsunami, people had no idea where it was coming. And those buoys are important. We have them around Hawaii, of course, obviously, keeping an eye on things. Now, the other day, I may have mentioned in passing that there had been a storm off to the southeast, which was sort of, forming, but it looked to miss us and it looked to be breaking up. Well, that's no longer true. It's now a full-blown hurricane, Hurricane Walaka. It's a Cat 4. It was a Cat 5 yesterday. And here's where it's interesting. It's actually going to divert northward, still well away from us, but it's a crazy storm season out here this year. It really has been here. The other day we were talking about how a celebrity who was convinced their child was killed by the DTaP vaccine had paid to put up a billboard. Apparently, another billboard that was questioning vaccine safety was put up near Middlemore Hospital in New Zealand. And it's already been taken down. The sign originally showed a man holding a baby with the message, "If you knew the ingredients in a vaccine, would you risk it?" So the Advertising Standards Authority received over 140 complaints, probably from pharmacists, and ordered the billboard taken down. Up in Calgary, even though we're just 2 weeks into autumn, winter has set right on in. They got whacked with snow. The city and surrounding regions were hit with a heavy snowfall, making the roads and highways slick for morning commuters. Calgary Transit reported that morning buses that travel on hills will have trouble navigating the roads. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Please join us on the air, 800-313-9443. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're spending a little time with human-caused global warming. And of course, it's already been snowing in the northern hemisphere, Canada, northern parts of the Great Plains, for several weeks now. And as the Old Farmer's Almanac predicted, the winter's going to be early, and it's probably going to be very, very hard. And if you live in those parts of the countries, you'd better make preparations and stop listening to all this stuff about, oh, snowfalls are a thing of the past, because a lot of people, a lot of towns got hurt by that. They actually bought into it. Oh, we don't need to spend as much money on road grit and snow plows and the rest of it, and then they got caught off guard. So NASA has now started to come clean on what's called the thermosphere, which, as the name implies, it's sort of our temperature, our overall temperature. And it's now at record cold. And NASA is stating that it is entering record territory. And even NASA is starting to use the term solar minimum cold, which is a very delightful change from that constant warming. So NASA may be just, trying to save face, because this may be the winter that will put the nail in the coffin of Al Gore and his human-caused global warming scam. But apparently, there was a very strange event that happened where auroras were observed without a coronal mass ejection to go with them. So everybody's wondering, where did those charged particles come from? Is the magnetosphere starting to go into decline? That would be a big problem. That would be a big problem, much larger than human-caused global warming here. Over in Germany, and let me preface this with a reminder that when Al Gore cooked up this whole human-caused global warming, it ignited, a green revolution. We're going to find ways to live our lives without carbon-based fuels. And most of these ideas were just thrown out there, funded, developed, and pushed forward without really thinking them all the way through. And I'll give you a good example: adding ethanol to gasoline. And there was a problem with it, first of all, because it was not actually carbon neutral when you factored in the carbon being generated by the processing of the plant matter into the ethanol. Ethanol doesn't contain as much energy as gasoline, so you had to buy and burn more of it to get the same amount of work done in the vehicle. And finally, what nobody really realized until it was way too late is the fuel systems on cars of that era are designed to use gasoline. And ethanol was actually destroying the fuel systems. Now, eventually they came out with cars that had fuel systems that could use the ethanol gasoline, but a lot of older cars really got messed up. When we still had the Honda, we actually had to drive quite a distance to gas it up to a gas station that sold ethanol-free gasoline for recreational vehicles. And that's where we'd get our gasoline. There are some major automotive manufacturers who will void the warranty on the engine of the car if you're using ethanol-based gasoline. So it was a mess. So anyway, getting on back to Germany. Germany launched a program. When all of this stuff was going up, they called it Milestone 2020. And it was this expensive program to build wind and solar. And Germany's Federal Audit Office has now accused the government of a catastrophic mismanagement of the green energy transition. The wastage of resources is unprecedented. And with still a year to go, the auditing body has concluded a catastrophic assessment of the energy policy. Germany will miss its targets for both reducing greenhouse gas emissions and primary energy consumption, as well as for increasing energy productivity and the share of renewable energy in transport. And meanwhile, they burden the nation with enormous, enormous costs. Well, what do you expect? It's a government project here. We're dealing with that on this island with that light rail system, which is years behind schedule, billions over budget. There are private citizens groups trying to get an audit done. The company behind the light rail is fighting an audit tooth and nail. Over in California, the exact same company is building their light rail system. 5 weeks from now, in the midterm elections, there will be a referendum on the California ballot calling for the cancellation of the program. And there are a lot of people around here in Hawaii who are absolutely convinced that this thing will never be finished. And we're all going to have to live with this ugly track thing hanging over our heads. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And again, I could use some phone calls here, 800-313-9443. Let's get on back to Elon Musk. He's certainly been in the news an awful lot. And do you remember back when he was trying to get that additional funding to prop up Tesla? And he actually tweeted out, funding secured, which got everybody, oh, yeah, we can buy Tesla stock, ran up the stock price. That one tweet is going to cost Musk and Tesla $20 million each in a settlement with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I wish they'd been that on the ball with Bernie Madoff. But, yeah, it was a way to pump the market. And apparently, Elon Musk and his family control an offshore stock account in the Cayman Islands. So things are getting kind of rocky over there. As you know, Musk has stepped down as the Tesla chairman. He's still technically working there. But the board of directors is very unhappy with him. They've had a lot of top executives leave and start looking for someplace better to go to. And here's a bizarre little article that came out of the Daily Mail over in Great Britain, suggesting that Al Gore replace Elon Musk as the chairman of Tesla because of the former vice president's renewable energy expertise. Al Gore didn't have any renewable energy expertise. He never studied science or climate when he was in school. You know, he was out there promoting the idea of renewable energy. He never came up with a workable idea. I can't tell if this is a serious suggestion or somebody just thought they needed to fill some column inches and they were going to have a joke. Okay. And okay. Now, turning back to NASA, apparently the Kepler telescope is starting to feel its age, and they're talking about it may have to be shut down very, very soon. Two systems are troubling the aging telescope. The instrument is struggling to point precisely across the heavens, and it is running out of fuel. And the team behind Kepler has turned off the instrument temporarily. Then they'll wake it up again on October 10th when it's due to send its next batch of data back to Earth. And at this point, according to NASA, there's no way to tell whether that process will be successful. And if it is, they'll set the telescope back to gathering data, trying to eke out as much as possible from the machine. But it is running out of fuel, and there's no way back from that. Okay, we have a phone call. Paul from New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I wanted to talk a little about Miss Blasey Ford. I know I'm a little late on the topic, but it's better I sit and think it out before I go public with it.
Okay.
But my comments concerning her is, I don't know, in the national narrative, I think a lot of people fail to realize, you know, that she lived a very privileged life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she was a member of a country club. She had failing grades, and if you look at her, her pursuits to advanced education, she finally got her doctorate in 2009, some 20-some-odd years later. So she must have been done with college about at the age of 40. So you have to wonder, who paid for that? Where was the money coming from? And obviously, she had a rich mother and father. Good for her.
Yes.
And one of the things I think we as a society, and especially with Western women, don't realize is they really don't, and they get on the feminist bandwagon, but they fail to realize how actually very good they do have it.
Yes.
In Western civilization, the women in this civilization of ours, because a lot of women are. I mean, when you think about the trauma she suffered, even if it was the big trauma of her life, right? Is it anything the average boy didn't go through with, or get on the schoolyard or worse?
Yes.
Back in my day, it was getting beat up, fighting constantly, wedgies, right? Getting wedgies, and all kinds of barbaric boy behavior. And remember, everybody says, don't treat the women different. right?
Yes.
And yet, the average boy in my day, black eyes, shiners, getting stung by wasps. If you're a rural person, you get even worse.
Yep.
And so this girl, to me, is like she is, and that's what I thought about when I was watching this hearing. In a sense, was that's the worst you ever got? That's the worst.
It's the era of the liberal snowflake. If dust falls on them, they break into tears.
Exactly, and here they're making a big federal case out of a non-rape, right? Because she didn't get raped.
No,
and it was by another minor. He was 17, and I'm just, I know people from foreign countries, and they're remarking at how ridiculous America is that they would even entertain the pettiness of this.
Yes.
It's so petty. And now, slowly it's starting to come out that, hey, wait a minute, Judge Breyer, he was drinking when he was young. And the liberal women are almost like at one minute they're saying, party, be a libertine, have fun, enjoy yourself. And then the next minute, they're like sexually repressed Victorian school marms of the 1800s saying, don't drink, don't have fun. Right?
Yes.
And they are not, they don't have a coherent narrative. They just jump from one position to the next. Don't you rowdy boys, don't be rowdy. And then the next minute, they're like, where are all the strong men?
Yeah.
Right? And
it's all ad hoc thinking.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. It's like, I look back on my, the fun in the schoolyard, and I got it, and I gave some back. And I wouldn't change it for the world. They were great days, even when I got it. Right? Even when you know what I mean? It's just, and I don't focus on it. I don't think it's a big deal. And, and this woman who, notice, she's diminutive. She's blonde.
Yes.
And I think throughout her life, men would open doors for her. Men would bring the package for her because she's the small, diminutive woman.
Yeah.
And so her whole life has been probably surrounded by men. Oh, here, ma'am, let me help you with your bag. Here, ma'am, let me help you. And maybe I'm wrong. But it just seems the pettiness of it is just exasperating.
It is pettiness, and again, you're right. People used to be a lot tougher in these situations, and I'm not trying to gloss over that she may have been physically assaulted. The question always was it really Kavanaugh or was it somebody else? And there was that other kid at the party who, if you look at their yearbook photos, they're almost twins. They look so much like each other. The story just doesn't hold water. This professional sex investigator has already said her story can't be believed. But you're right. She came from a privileged upbringing. She went to a fancy girls' private school, which then hung out with the students from the fancy boys' private school when they were off campus, drinking underage. And as I said earlier in the show, hormones and alcohol and parties, things do happen. And that is a reality. But in the past, we used to roll with it. But, back in the 90s, the militant feminists were out there saying that, every little contact was a potential rape and you should scream and play victim. And it's one of the ways that feminism betrayed women, because instead of really empowering them and making them strong and making them resilient, it actually made them weaker and made them into even worse victims than they had been before.
Yeah, and another element of this is that the left always promotes is diversity. Well, you're saying on the Supreme Court justice, there's no room on the Supreme Court for a drunken frat boy. Is that not allowed? But you have all the other, our tokens. We have Clarence Thomas and his former Black Panther. right?
Yeah, we need a token alky. But on the other hand, you know, Justice Breyer was arrested for underage drinking, so his record is not spotless.
And then we have our affirmative. And then we have our affirmative action advanced lesbian, Miss Kagan.
Yep.
Right. And so I guess white frat boys aren't allowed in anymore. Is that, just was one a drunken old time bully type boy, which, by the way, many of my friends from high school, I loved the bully guys. They were fun. That drunken carousing sounds like fun a little bit.
Well, it's part of your socialization process, developing, the pecking order, the social ordering of the community. And yes, it's very primitive behavior, but it is human nature. And one of the ways that liberalism has failed is in the assumption that they can change human nature. It's never, ever worked.
Yeah, and I look back to the days of like playing Kill the Carrier on the schoolyard. That was great. And dodgeball, that was so much fun. And ad hoc football games, that was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And, with the wussification of the nation, in a sense, they're taking away a lot of the old style male fun and bonding and establishment of hierarchies. And the last point I like to make is how, at least feminists do the following. How about making some heroines out of some real rape victims who did the right thing, who, if they were sexually assaulted, and I'm talking about real sexual assault, not being goosed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not having your butt grabbed at a bar. No, a real sexual assault, the ones that went to the police, who put up a fight, who had forensic evidence, who went through the trial and got that rapist or sexual deviant convicted. Make heroines out of those women, because that's what we want the women to do. We want them to be strong. We want them when they say, no meaning no, and putting up a fight, standing by that no. And that is something the feminists, I don't even think they're doing a really good job teaching that to the other women.
I think the idea is, again, they're selling this idea that any unwanted contact from a man represents sexual assault. And it is, in fact, sort of trivializing real sexual assault, real rape. But again, it's all for political purpose. Okay, listen, thank you for the phone call. We got to take a break for commercials. We have other callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And before we go back to the phones, a timely reminder that tomorrow is the day where they're testing this presidential alert system. And supposedly it's going to start at 2:18 p.m. I don't know why the odd time. But it's basically going to be popping up the alert pop up on your smartphones and your tablets and who knows what all else here. And I just hope Donald Trump doesn't start using it like his new Twitter channel, because that would be a little annoying. All right, back to the phones here. Rick in Arizona. Aloha, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yo, Mike. How you doing there, buddy?
Doing fine.
I think what we got here with this cabinet thing, it's a little more sophisticated than meets the eye. This is like, we got all these tough, the Republicans control the House, they control the executive branch, and they control the Senate. And this little 85-year-old lady comes walking down with a piece of paper in her hand and causes all this trouble. Now, you got to remember or think about this. The Democrat Party voters are a large block of these type of women. Okay?
Yes.
Part of this is revenge. Part of this is telling Kavanaugh and showing the world what we can do to you if you step out of line. Just look what they are doing to him, and he's probably innocent. Who knows? Maybe she was the one pulling the train. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye, I think. And so, it fills up a lot of space. It took Mueller and Comey and all that crap talk off of Rush Limbaugh and all the other channels. Now we're talking about this. So, yeah, this isn't just about a crotch grind. This has a lot more to do with revenge of the nerds. This is messaging out there. It has a lot more to do than what we're seeing. And so I can't listen to talk radio anymore. This crap just never quits. But just think about it. These type of women who are not very good looking in high school, they are a large block of the Democrat Party. And I think this has a lot to do with giving them some satisfaction. And thanks for taking my call.
All right. Well, you're welcome. And yes, you're absolutely right. This is a couple of messages going on out there. As we mentioned earlier in the show, a lot of Republicans, well, men in general, are now bemoaning the fact that we're back to the 1990s, where all men are presumed innocent of being sexual animals, rather presumed guilty. And that's a very uncomfortable place to be in. And again, back in the 1990s, during that feminist male bash, all men are rapists mindset, women were encouraged to cry rape at every possible opportunity as a form of empowerment. If you're in the, a company and there's a promotion coming up, there's a higher office open, and there's a guy there who's competing with you go ahead and say he's a rapist, get him out of your way. And I trace some of the decline of our ethics in our society back to that all ends justify the means mindset that we saw come out of that. Okay, we're going to start with Steve Elkins. And Steve, I'm probably going to take you to the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Well, what we're seeing here is a war on the white conservative male is what we're actually seeing. And you're right, they're weaponizing the accusations, allegations, and rumors now. And I find it quite interesting that the Democrat Party, the party of minorities, the party of the LGBTQ plus, and everybody else there that doesn't fall into the other category of being a Republican or an independent, I guess, that they're attacking Lindsey Graham now and using homosexuality labels to kind of take him down. I think that's kind of weird. They're turned out to be kind of the chameleon party, changing their colors as it fits them politically. But here's they're talking about discrimination and everything like that, and then what do they do here? They attack Lindsey Graham, claiming that he's a homosexual, and he may be or he may not be. But the point is, that party really doesn't stand much for anymore. If it doesn't fit them politically, they change very, very fast. Will throw their own people, per se, under the bus.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, first of all, I don't care if Lindsey Graham is gay or not. I don't think it's really a factor. But you're absolutely right. For the liberals who are supposed to be so pro-gay, pro-LGBT, to come on out and use homophobic attacks on him, it doesn't really make any sense. And it does underscore that the liberals don't have a consistent philosophy. It's just, scream until you get what you want. And they're going to go on screaming. Now, Mitch McConnell, of course, is out there saying we're going to have a vote on Kavanaugh by the end of this week. But I'm predicting the Democrats are going to try a world record long filibuster to prevent that. I agree. It is making us look so bad to the rest of the world. And it almost makes me ashamed to be an American, to see the government acting like such children, because that's exactly what they are. Now, the Republicans are trying to be mature. The Republicans are trying to take the high road, for which they have been accused of being wussies and not strong enough. But I think they're just going to back off and allow the Democrats to go on acting like spoiled children. And we'll see what effect it has in the midterms. Anyway, Steve, do you want to stay into the next section?
Yeah, just real quick here. Yeah.
All right. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're still talking with Steve Elkins. And Steve, take it away.
Yeah, I made two predictions last week, and they came true. I wish they hadn't, but I did suspect or theorize that they would take Kavanaugh's anger. I mean, think about what they're saying. They're destroying his life. They're destroying his reputation, and he pushed back. He got a little angry, and he should. I think he was rather controlled myself.
Yes.
I probably would have been a little bit more vocal, a little more heated. But I thought he handled himself well. But I knew they would turn that around to say, look at him. Barbara Boxer did that. This is the kind of man you want, a violent man on the Supreme Court. And they also theorized they would try to manufacture some other story. Now, they had to make it even more spectacular than anything else has come across so far. The sex dungeon was good. I mean, that's a stretch, but they had to go a little deeper to touch us a little bit closer. So I figured they would manufacture some child story, and they did. USA Today, a couple of days ago, had an article that insinuated that should we be looking into Brett Kavanaugh coaching his daughter's soccer team, as he might be not trustworthy and leaning towards he possibly could be a pedophile. Now, that's a low blow to go there.
That is absolutely.
I'm really not understanding why there haven't been any defamation of character lawsuits out there yet. Whether he gets confirmed or not, my God, this is your reputation. I'll be having my lawyers all over this stuff to stop this. And if you make people pay, they usually stop the bad behavior. But that was the lowest blow I've ever seen, and I figured that was going to happen, and I was right on that one.
Well, like I said, next it'll be the overdue library books.
Well, I got to say, Dustin has been rubbing off on me a little bit, and I sent you some humor here. And even though this isn't all that humorous, the Democrats are really struggling. They're desperate. They are very desperate to derail this nominee. And I came up with 6. I had 5, and I just added a new one of here reasons going back into your childhood. And now these are all the same things you and I played, Mike. Things we did as boys, and boys will be boys. We were caught pulling the wings off of flies. We were caught burning ants with our magnifying glass. I think we're all guilty of that at some point in time. Removing the glowing part of the firefly. I remember doing that. That's a bad thing. And we had all probably smashed a few pumpkins on Halloween, and also played that little football game back in junior high. I know we played it. It was called Smear the Queer. And you kicked the ball in the air, and whoever caught it, everybody tried to take him down. So, like I said, these guys are really, the Democrats are very desperate right now. And I agree with you. They are going to try to figure out some way to delay this again. I have one question for you.
Yeah.
Prediction, Jeff Flake, is he going to confirm, or is he going to be a turncoat?
He's a turncoat. Remember, he was instrumental in asking for this one final FBI investigation, and he's already indicated he's not going to confirm. And we were talking about him earlier in the show. So he also confirmed that had he not been retiring at the end of this session, that he wouldn't have kicked up this kerfuffle. So he was somebody that had nothing to lose, that was used as a tool to try and, dust things up.
Yeah. Hey, well, one last thing real quick here. On the IRS thing, I asked you a question about the GoFundMe. Both candidates have at least $1 million. I don't think Kavanaugh needs it. Maybe Ford does. But and I suggested that the money for Ford should go to a battered women's group, or sexual abuse, something with the women helping women. That would be a good thing to do that. Of course, I don't think that'll ever happen. So does this money, is it taxable by the IRS or considered a gift and non-taxable?
I am not a tax attorney. I would presume that it is a gift, but I think there is a gift tax. I guess the IRS will make that decision themselves. My guess is everybody's going to be hands off Christine Ford when this is all over, because she's notorious and she can play victim and cause a lot of negative PR. I think everybody just wants this to be over. I'm sick and tired of this Kavanaugh carnival, or Kavanaughsia, whatever you want to call it. And I do hope that it is brought to a conclusion at the end of this week, because we're only 5 weeks away from the midterms, and we should be looking at the candidates, not the Supreme Court. But again, I'm concerned that the Democrats may try and pull a filibuster.
Yeah, I agree. That's it for me, Mike. Thanks. Great show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and switch over to Mark in Philadelphia. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Michael. I wanted to, I'm tired of hearing about the Kavanaugh thing. I think it's a circus. I think it's a distraction for the other side. It makes the process of vetting a person for our high court of in our land. It makes it look totally outrageous. I mean,
Yes.
it's silly. Yeah. Anyway, I want to bring it to your attention. This has to do with concerning the police state. John Whitehead at the Rutherford Institute. I just received an email, and I encourage people to go to the Rutherford.org to check out some of the things he has to say. His most recent email says, Whitehead, creating a suspect society, the scary side of the technological police state. Creating a suspect society, the scary side of the technological police state. It's a very long email, but it's incredibly revealing about the ways and means and methods that they're using to gather evidence against us. Because, Michael, we're all outlaws. According to them, we're all outlaws. It's just a matter of time before they catch up to all of us. Right?
Yeah.
So,
look at the way they're treating Kavanaugh. It's a return to Code Napoleon. You're guilty of something. We just have to figure out what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And in correlation to that, I just opened up another email, and this is via the Activist Post, and this was written by a Joe Jarvis, the title of it being The Secret Algorithm That Could Send You to Prison, Take Your Kids, or Crash Your Car. And this has to do with algorithms, and he relates it to DNA, how in the future the DNA match will be figured out by a computer algorithm.
Yes.
Now check that out. This is the future coming at us. What is that, Minority Report? Remember the movie?
Yes.
Philip K. Dick? Yeah. So I encourage people to go to read these two emails. The Rutherford email, again, creating a suspect society, the scary side of the technological police state, incredibly revealing. And then to augment and affirm and augment that is this other one, the secret algorithm that could send you to prison, take your kids, or crash your car. Like for instance, it brings up like with your car, what happens when an algorithm for a self-driving car has to decide between hitting a group of pedestrians or plunging itself and you off a cliff. So
that's probably why Steve Wozniak said it's never really going to work. Mark, I'm looking at the Rutherford.org right now. Where would I find these emails? Because I don't see them immediately.
Well, I don't know, because I'm already signed up for the email on his email list.
So he sent you the emails, but they're not necessarily. Okay, after the show, I'll take a look and see if I can find them here, because, I'm very worried about this technological tyranny that we're all going into, mostly because so many of these technologies are not robust. They're being shoved into usage while there are still problems. We're literally living in a beta test environment here. We know that a lot of those DNA tests are less than accurate. We know that lab technicians do make mistakes. We know that software makes mistakes. You could literally have your life destroyed, not because some liberal professor accused you of rape, but because some computer just makes a mistake. And that is a very, very scary thing right now.
Yeah, and what's revealing about this email he sent out is, it's a pretty long email, and he goes into detail about the many ways they're gathering data, or evidence against us, or is it data? Yeah.
Well, they're calling it data, but and it's a fishing expedition. They're just looking for reasons to go after people. And it's like we're living in the days of Nazi Germany, where the Gestapo is spying on everything that you do, or Stalinist Russia, or East Germany, where the Stasi. The Stasi was just known for collecting every bit of information they could on everybody.
Right. By the way, did you know that I had heard? I haven't been to L.A. to confirm this, but in Los Angeles, they now have a scanner, or a X-ray machine at the subway. Have you heard that?
I heard that they were coming. I wasn't aware that they were already there. But yeah, TSA is going to be setting up at bus and train stations now. so that you can get groped and irradiated no matter which form of transport that you use. What are they going to do next? Demand a TSA pat-down to drive your own car?
Right. And just to let you know from the front lines here in Philadelphia, they've done away with cash for you to be able to use cash on the at the turnstile or at the on the buses or trolleys or trains. Well, the trains I think you can still with because they have the conductors. But now they've put up turnstiles where formerly you could go to the commuter rail and just get on the rail and then pay the conductor, tell them where you're going on that line and pay it, and no big deal. Well, now you got to have a card to get through the turnstile to get on the train to then pay. And now the cards now are still, they'll let you be anonymous, but they do, they try to sell you on the idea of attaching your name to the card so that in case you lose it, you won't lose the value on the card. I said, well, I'd rather just remain anonymous. But so now, for now, you can remain anonymous, but I guarantee you they're going to push it to where you have to put your name on that card. And so what other reason is it but tracking where you're going?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's for.
I've asked them several times randomly about this, the people that are standing by these turnstiles, to educate the people about why they're there, why the turnstiles are now there. And I've said, well, what's the deal? They said, well, we've had, it's because some people get on the train and then they don't pay. And I said, well, is there that many people getting on the train and not paying? Didn't sound, it just didn't make any sense. So it's tracking. So that's what's happening here in one of the original cities of the United States for everybody out there. So it's coming your way, coming to a city near you. So we got to stop this somehow, Mike. So thank you very much.
It's out of control here. Well, I don't know if it's coming to a city near me because they can't get the light rail system working anyway. It's all about tracking and collecting all this information. But what's really interesting is, again, a lot of companies are making money off of all of this. It is intrusive. It is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Personally, I seriously doubt they're going to be able to make sense of the information they're collecting. There is simply too much of it. And they'll collect it all up and they'll put it in a data center somewhere and say, we're doing our job, we're keeping watch on everybody. But given my experience with large computer databases, they're drowning in their own data. I remember back when...
But then on that note, Michael, get this. Who's watching the watchers? So now who's watching the databases? In other words, who's going to audit the databases? And then they'll say, well, we've audited it and everything's fine. And you're guilty, just like the computer said. So it's another case of Fox watching the chicken coop. And Fox is all these corporations that are going to make money off of all of this. See? So
look at how many people got put on the no-fly list who shouldn't have been there. And there was no mechanism for them to get off. I remember that they actually did it to a member of Congress, and obviously they pulled his name off there. But if they're making those kinds of mistakes, it's a huge risk to law-abiding citizens. Look how many times the police have gone to the wrong house. Look how many times it's not going to work. It's going to be just more oppression on the American people.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for asking the keen questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark. And we're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, all this surveillance stuff, which is absolutely right. You made a statement that you're guilty of something, we just don't know what. Remember you saying that just a couple of minutes ago?
Yeah.
That the attitude that they have. Well, when they put these huge data centers up, to save all these hard drives of all our intercepts, and the intelligence agencies that have all these intercepts, and if they want you, they go back and you're guilty of something.
Yeah.
We just have to find. Well, they pull your thumbnail and they go through and they release it. They put the analyst on that. And if they don't like Kavanaugh, they can do that. It's interesting that all this generates from Dianne Feinstein, by the way.
Yes.
Who, chairman of the Senate, or used to be head of the Intelligence Committee, ranking member now, I believe.
Yes.
But they can just get you what they want. And thus, by the way, nobody's going to ever be impeached without the acquiescence of the intelligence committee, because they can just, or the intelligence community, they can just go through and release whatever they want in driblets. They can kill you, even if you've done nothing. They could release it in driblets. A lot of, damned by 1,000 pricks or whatever the hell
death of 1,000 cuts.
1,000 cuts, and it's, they can do that to anybody, let alone somebody who actually does have something. And the threat of that is overwhelming, even to an innocent guy. And these intelligence agencies, this surveillance stuff, it's got to go.
I agree. Really I agree. But again, it's going to have to be something that when this government has collapsed or lost a war and we set up a new one, we go back and you say that Fourth Amendment gets carved in stone. And you need to understand right now, there are so many laws. It is impossible to live your life without breaking some law somewhere. And I can imagine after a while, a lot of people just say, why even bother trying? Anyway, listen, Peter, we're going to let you go. We're going to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today, and finishing up with a little bit of scientific news here. Turning out to planet Mars, my second most favorite world, obviously. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has captured an image of the Opportunity rover sitting on the surface. And while the images of the rover itself is very small, analysts are saying it does look like the dust storm caked Opportunity in dust. And that means the show is basically over. I mean, they could sit and wait and hope for the dust to blow off. But if it's absolutely caked in dust, then the solar cells are still blocked from the sun, and they're not going to really be able to get much done with that. Over on the other side of the planet, they're still working on the Curiosity rover. Now, it's fully functional. Everything is working, but for some reason, it can't send data back to Earth from the various instruments. It's sending technical stuff about the rover itself. They're in communication. It's responding. But for some reason, the computer is unable to access an area of the memory where the data from the experiments is stored. Now, supposedly NASA was going to activate a backup computer system to see if that would fix the problem. So far, it does not look like it has, but they're still confident it will bounce back from the glitch. So it's been a bad couple of weeks here for NASA between Opportunity and Curiosity and the Kepler Space Telescope. It's getting kind of rough out there. Now, Senator Rand Paul is calling for a criminal investigation of the House of Representatives staffers who doxed the U.S. senators. Because you're not supposed to do that. That's where you get Maxine Waters out there saying, we know where you live. And finally, there is this pastor that is out there saying that if you are not donating 10% of everything you make to the church, you are effectively robbing God, and you're going to go away for that. And apparently, his pastor's name is Charles Stanley. He's the senior pastor of First Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. One of the funny stories that we had on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com is about these two preachers from mega churches, televangelists, trying to justify owning private jets. Well, I'm getting higher to heaven. I'm getting nearer to God. But that's a little bit out there. That is a little out there. Okay. Apparently, a leftist has been arrested for vandalizing the GOP headquarters with rape after doing an interview with local media. This was at Winnebago County Republican Party headquarters. Apparently, she tipped off during this interview that she was going to do this. So That was kind of stupid. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get out of here. I got stuff I got to get done this afternoon. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know, and pass it along through emails, paper notes, paper airplanes, smoke signals, whatever. Social media is totally compromised. This is an unbelievably dark time we are having to live through, and we'll just have to do our best. So please donate to RBN. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.